Yeah, thank you. Okay. Good evening, everyone. We are sorry for the hitch, but we are started now. Uh, Welcome to the Indian Society of Landscape Architects Gujarat chapters 1 by 1 sessions, and we are very honored to have with us today Mr. Mohammad Dilawar, who's an ornithologist and plant conservationist based out of Nasik. Mr. Dilawar started as a volunteer at the grassroots level, conducting surveys and creating awareness about conservation. He completed his master's in ecology and worked as a lecturer and head of the department at RYK College of Science in Nasik before joining the Royal Society for Protection of Birds in 2006. He worked with RSPB until 2010 on the project of safeguarding key IBA habitats of India and worked for a report submitted to the MOEF on impact of cell towers on wildlife and bees. He initiated the world's first Sparrow Day in 2009, and today it is celebrated across more than 30 countries across the world. Mr. Dilawar was also named as one of the heroes of the environment in 2008 by Time magazine in their list of 30 most influential environmentalists in the world. We are very honored to have you, sir. We would like you to now start your presentation. Tapan, if you can stop presenting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot.
ये लेके रखे कवर में डालेगा देखेगा या निकाल देना
So just a second, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm unable to share the screen.
Tapan, probably you'll have to allow sharing screen. Just check.
Should I make him the host?
No, you just have to allow sharing screen by participants.
I have allowed it. It's coming.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
coming now.
Yeah, now I am able to do that. Okay, so can everyone see the screen now?
Yeah, we can see it. Please.
Okay, thanks a lot for giving me this wonderful opportunity to the entire Gujarat ISOLA chapter, to Sandeep sir from CEPT. This is a wonderful opportunity that will really help us to communicate the work that we have been doing for all this time. Now, this is something that I really like. With great power comes great responsibility. And all this August gathering of some of the most influential landscape architects from across the country is a wonderful opportunity, as well as I would like to share something. All of you people are having a great power because you people are great influencers. The designs that you make, the gardens that you create, the landscaping architecture that you do is an influence, because what happens is a lot of time when people see your wonderful gardens, they see the plants that you have used in some of your signature gardens, they in today's time they take photographs, and they might go and they replicate the same designs, they use the same plants to create gardens, or it is something which probably starts with a trend. And in with this influence that you all have, it's also great responsibility specifically towards saving the flora and fauna of our country. So to start with, I will start with the biogeographic zones of our country. And over the past 20 years, I've got a wonderful opportunity to travel across the length and breadth of the country, from say Kutch to Arunachal, and from Kashmir to Kerala. In the last 20 years, I have surveyed a great deal of landscapes, national parks, sanctuaries, and over the last 10 years, I've also surveyed a lot of nurseries. So probably in the last 10 years, we have surveyed almost around 800 to 900 nurseries, both commercial as well as forest department and private nurseries. And this was the time when we also started looking into a greater detail into the landscape or the gardens which are being created across the country. And the reason for that is around 15 years back, when we started our work for saving sparrows, one of the key reasons for the decline of sparrow is they were not getting enough amount of insect to feed to their young ones. And the reason was the insects are not there because the plants were not there. So that was the time when I started looking more into a greater detail into the floral aspect, because we were doing a lot of study into the interaction of uh, animals and plants. But that was the time when I started getting more into a greater detail into the interaction. And that was also the time when I realized the menace of non-native plants in our country. So I will give you two examples. If you go to Corbett and Mudumulai, the infestation of a plant like lantana is so great that even elephants can't pass through that. And because of that, they have to change their migratory patterns where they come in conflict with humans, which increases the man-human conflict. So this is what we have been trying to understand over the past 20 years. And I also started doing a greater amount of research into the plantation pattern, which has been prevalent in India over the last say 2000 or 5000 years. So these are the four main classification that I have done. If we want to go back and study the landscaping history of India. So previously, during the Vedic times or the ancient Indian times, the plantation was done in and around temples, homes, palaces, and other utility places. And when you study this, a lot of this plantation was utility based. It was about the flowers which were used in temple, or the medicines and other things, or aesthetic thing. And they were predominantly of mostly native plants. Later on, when Mughals came to India, they brought in some plants from Central Asian region and other things. But a lot of the plantation that they did, they didn't do a lot of plantation outside their palaces because they wanted that to be exclusive. And after a period of time, majority of the Mughals, they didn't travel outside the country. So the infestation of non-native plants was not that great. What I will be talking into a more depth is the British era and the post-independence era. So, as you all know, the Britishers were having colonies in different parts of the world. Like as they say, the sun never set in the British Empire. So they had colonies in different parts of the world. And what they started doing is they started creating botanical gardens in the country. In different parts, they started doing plantation. They brought in lawns, the concept of lawn. And so was the influx of non-native plants in the country. which was phenomenal. Like if someone was based out of Africa, they liked some plants. When they were traveling back to India, they brought those plants from Africa. Someone brought it from Brazil. So I will be talking about much more detail in the coming slide. What is I'll discuss this one plant, which is water hyacinth, which a lot of people must be knowing. So the fun is that a wife of the first British Governor General, Lady Hastings, she liked the flower of the water hyacinth when she was in Brazil, and she bought around 3-4 plants along with her when she came from Brazil to India. And that single plant, when she brought to India, this is what it has done after, say, around 150 or 200 years. Today, the water hyacinth is one of the most invasive plant in our water ecosystems. It has reduced oxygen, light, vegetation, and created aquatic imbalance in all our rivers, lakes, estuaries, even village ponds and other things. And because of that, the fisheries in all this freshwater ecosystems have got seriously affected. In a lot of places, the rivers have been blocked to the extent like even the boats and other things can't go through it. The other thing what happens is during the rainy season when the flooding happens, and this water hyacinth gets deposited over the paddy fields, the production drops down significantly. So this single plant has caused economic and ecological loss, probably worth over billions of dollars in the country. And what happens is there is no quantification of this when we do the things. Later on, when the post-independence era happened, this is my observation, like along with the software industry. So the software industry had a lot of money, and they not only brought in the computers and the technology from the West, along with that, they brought in a lot of concepts also. So the way the software parks were designed, a lot of these architects and designers came from different parts of the world. And probably the foreign architectural firms from London, America, Singapore, Southeast Asia, these people didn't had a very detailed or intimate knowledge about our rich biodiversity.
ಒಂದಕ್ಕೆ ತೊಂದರೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಪಾಪ.
So probably what was happening is they were designing, sitting in their offices in different parts of the world, our gardens with plants that they were aware about. Along with that, they brought in very standardized practices of land leveling, soil filling, and all that. So this non-native plants could survive. During that era, the demand of this plant was so great, and the quantum of the business was so high, like a lot of farmers got slowly converted into nurserymen that we see today. So even if you see the traditional nursery belts in the country, they are probably farmers who have got converted into nurserymen. And a majority of the nurserymen are selling non-native plants across the country, whether it is Pune, whether it is the centers in South, or if you go to West Bengal. So what has happened is there is a demand and a supply. And probably the plants are getting treated as an object of fashion. Like, okay, this is a new plant which is being brought to the market. And in today's time, large scale plants are getting imported from different parts of the world. And the people who are operating these nurseries probably have zero knowledge about botany. So a lot of time, if you even ask them the scientific name of the plants, they will not know, but they will know the trade name, which will again vary from region to region. And generally, it is about bringing plants which are smaller in size from tissue culture labs, from cuttings. A lot of plants are also getting imported from China. And the plants are put in bags and raised. And this is happening in different parts of the country presently. Again, this is a very well-structured thing where the designs which are provided by the landscape architects, along with the plants and other contours, are implemented by landscaping contractors, and the material which is required, especially when I'm talking about plants, is procured from the nurserymen. So this is how the entire landscaping thing works in India. Now, in this thing, what is happening is we are creating large scale gardens, which are urban green deserts. So if you see them, these are green across the year. You will never see colors as the seasons changes. So in nature, if you go and see, there is a season when the leaves are shed, which is called as spring. Then there is a season when the new flushing happens. So in a natural forest or in a natural ecosystem, you will see a place changing colors. But this gardens are just green in color. And when we did a much more in-depth study, we realized that there is absolutely no ecological value to this, and which has led to large-scale destruction of urban biodiversity and wildlife habitat. As this gardens require a huge amount of pesticide, fertilizers and other things, and they're very energy intensive. So a lot of trimming, cutting, moving and other things are required. So pollution levels are increasing, and they're very resource intensive as far as financial and manpower resources are concerned. So what is happening is, in an energy and resource scarce country like India, where water and energy is very scarce, a great amount of resources are getting used, and it is creating urban island effects. Plus, the biodiversity index in especially the urban landscape has dropped phenomenally. We are seeing decreasing population of birds, bees, butterflies. Pollinator populations have crashed. And in order to create these gardens, a lot of soil mining is done from different parts of the red soil is brought in, because Mother Earth is not used. As this non-native plants won't grow, the local plants will grow. And I think the primary reason for all this thing is there is lack of awareness. We don't have proper laws framed for this. And in all this thing, we are seeing increasing amount of urban flash flooding happening. We are creating substandard infrastructure, because of which human health and welfare is getting affected. Because the people who are maintaining the garden, they're constantly getting in contact with chemicals and other things. So what we need to do, we need to shift to native plants. Now, a lot of time a question is asked, what are native plants and which plants can be categorized as native plants? So it's very simple. Plants which are present in a particular region over millions of years, which have an important role to play in the ecosystem without any human intervention. So a tree which was there before humans came can be categorized as native plants. A lot of time people say like, oh, the plant was brought in 200, 300 years before. So it has naturalized, Indianized. There is nothing like that, because 200, 300 years is a very small time when we consider the ecological time frame. Now, another thing is specifically native plants of the region support huge amount of biodiversity and help the environment. Whereas non-native plants, they destroy the biodiversity and environment, play little or no ecological role. Native plants, which have evolved over millions of years, are a part of the ecosystem. They play their role. Whereas a non-native plant, since it doesn't have competitors, it doesn't have predators, it doesn't have other species which can eat them, they become invasive in nature. And a lot of time we have also said, flower like lantana gets a lot of butterflies, it gets a lot of honeybees. We have seen then when the fruit comes, it is bulbuls come and feed. So they are good for biodiversity, they are good for environment. But I would like to tell you when a butterfly or a honeybee comes and starts feeding nectar from a flower of lantana or other non-native plants, they make the flower, they make the seeds more fertile. And when the bird eats it, because for it, it is just food, they spread it through frugivory, because of which they are becoming invasive. The other thing is where when the leaf fall of native plants, they help in creating a humus and support the microfauna. Whereas plants like gulmohar or non-native plants, when they fall on the soil, they act, they have allelopathic effect on the soil, and they make the soil acidic, and they kill the microfauna like bacteria, earthworms, millipedes, and other things. A lot of the native plants have a deep role to play both in our ecosystems and our economy, because they have tremendous amount of ethnobotanical role. A lot of plants are consumed as medicines and other things. But when you when you are thinking about non-native plants, they have little or no economic and ecological role to play. Now, when you look into the native plants, they are so well engraved into our culture that a lot of food that we eat comes from them. They have tremendous amount of religious value, like a lot of pujas which are done, they require almost around 15 to 30, 40 parts of various plants. So they have tremendous amount of ecological role and religious role. And I always feel that our forefathers were very clever, that they gave the place of gods to a lot of our native plants. Like for example, banyan is considered as the avatar of Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, because probably our forefather knew that how important the tree is in relation to environment, and they gave them the status of a god. Now, whenever you use native plants, since they are evolved over millions of years, they are acclimatized to the climatic conditions, they help the wildlife, they don't use a lot of resources like water and other things. And our native plants are among some of the most beautiful plants in the world. And once they are established or they are set, they require little or no maintenance. So for all these things, native plants are great choice that we need to make. Now I'll come to the present state of our floral diversity in the country. And when you look at our present state, it's a very sorry condition. Out of the flora that is recorded in our country, 40% of the species are not native to the country. And all this introduction has happened in the last 200 to 250 years. Now, when we analyzed all this data, it came that 55% of the flora that is found in our country can be traced back to the Americas, whether South or North America. And a huge amount of introduction has happened during the British era. And there is a little bit data deficiency when we consider the record of introduction which has happened post-independence. And if you consider the present state, the influx of non-native plant has gone up like anything, because what we come to know or what we are observing, someone travels to Hong Kong, someone travels to Africa, they take a photo of a plant, they come back, they show to the nursery guy कि हमें ये plant चाहिए, and within days the plants are imported from different parts of the world and planted without following thing, and the government is also unaware. So very simple example is, if we travel to New Zealand, and even if there is a small seed in our shoes somewhere, they make sure that the seed is destroyed. That is the level of biosecurity those people have, because they know what impact non-native plants can do. Now, out of this 18,000 non-native plants which are there, we did a furthermore analysis, and we found out that 25% of those species are highly invasive in nature. Now, when we tell invasive is like almost around 4,500 plants are highly invasive. So once they are established, they spread like wildflower, fire. A common example of that, what I gave earlier, was water hyacinth. The other common example is Parthenium, which was introduced along with wheat somewhere in the 70s. And if you just calculate the loss that the Indian agricultural sector gets, is more than 30% because of non-native plants. So a lot of time people say that ye plant, it is not going to harm you in any way. The harm might not happen today, but over a period of next 50, 100 years, the way water hyacinth is creating havoc, we just can't imagine what havoc this 4,500 plus, or say 10,000 plants, which are of non-native plants, will do to our country. Now, another example that I would like to share is lantana, a plant which is very commonly used in landscaping in our country. And today there are more than 630 identified cultivars which we see being used across the country. Now, what happens is lantana, when it becomes invasive, you will see like today it has become invasive in almost different parts of the country. And when you very carefully observe this slide, you will see that all the area which is in red are the places which from where we get majority of our agricultural produce. These are the areas where mostly all our forests are there. And you all know that 70 to 80% of our rivers have origin in our national parks, in our forest. And if the forests are degraded, there will be no water. And the agricultural ecosystem is already infested with non-native plants. So it's a very difficult situation. And today in India, almost 13 million hectares of land is just affected by lantana. If I talk about other species, the figures are horrifying. Now, while I was working in Corbett around 2006, 7, 8, 9, the cost of removal of lantana from 1 hectare was around 10,000 rupees. So in those times, the value of removing lantana from across the country would have been somewhere around 12 to 13,000 crore rupees. If we calculate it in today's time, it will be approximately around 20, 30,000 crores. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of resources. We don't have that kind of political will. And it all seeps down to damaging our ecosystem, damaging our agriculture. So with folded hands, I would like to request all of you, it's not a risk worth taking. It's not, we have almost around 35,000 plus native plant species, which we can use in our landscape gardens. There's no need to bring in more non-native plants in our country. Now, a lot of time, these are some of the most commonly used non-native plants, which I will be showing in the coming few slides. And if you see the origin of majority of the plants are not from the country. Bougainvillea, one of the most widely spread plant, is from South America. Thivacea is from South America. Lantana is of course from South America. Sansevieria, a plant which is very widely used, is from Africa. It is not only non-native, it is a very poisonous plant, which should be avoided to be used, because a lot of time what happens, the kids which are there in the house, they accidentally eat the plant. And then what happens, we are also not aware ke what has happened. You rush them to the hospital. The doctor says कि इसको food poisoning हुआ है, and he flushes the stomach. But very few times we realize like the poison is not because of food poisoning. It has came from all these poisonous plants, which are widely used in our homes, offices, and gardens. This is another plant, Dieffenbachia, which is also called as dumbskin. Again, one of the most poisonous plant, very widely used. And the sad part is I've seen this plant used a lot in schools, kindergartens, nurseries. So what happens if you see the stem, it is like a cane. So kids think it's like a cane, they break it, and the sap which comes out, one drop, if it goes on your tongue, it causes a complete inflation of your respiratory tract. And at times that can happen within half an hour or so. So we are using so many amount of poisonous plants about which there is absolutely no awareness. The other thing which is happening in our country over the past few years, you see a lot of list being forwarded that this is a list being prepared by NASA. It will bring in fresh air, it will bring in oxygen, it will improve the air quality of your homes, and whatnot knowledge is being spread. So what we did a very quick analysis, and we did a fact checking of all the plants, the NASA list which is being forwarded. So the first thing was that 28 species which are found in the NASA list, out of the 30 are not native to the country, not native to India. And 17 of these plants are highly toxic in nature. The other thing is, when we did a little bit more fact checking, we found out that all the experiments that NASA had done was not in a room, but in sealed chambers. The other thing is, if you want to have oxygen, you will need to put around 10 plants per square feet to get the kind of oxygen that you would need. And if you have cross ventilation, it is much more effective than potted plants. And a lot of these non-native plants are over marketed for their oxygen capacity, air purification capacity, whatnot, without any scientific proof whatsoever by the nurseries and other agencies. The other component which is overused in Indian landscapes is the lawn. And it's again a British legacy. So when we travel to UK, we see extensive lawns near their palaces, near their winter retreats and all these places. So when the Britishers came along with them, they also brought in lawn and they planted extensive lawns in the country. And this is a British Raj hangover that we are just not able to come over. But a lot of time I've visited a lot of places and they have huge lawns, and then they will put a board that don't walk on the lawn. So I would like to tell you one thing, I'm not an activist. If you have a functional value of lawn, like if there is a lawn which needs to be there for a party, for event, or it has a specific purpose where it will be used, lawn should be only used in that condition. It should not be used for aesthetic purpose, where you are having large lawns just for aesthetic purpose, and then you put a board that don't walk on the lawn. The reason for this is lawns have a very high maintenance cost. So probably an acre of lawn will require more than 60,000-70,000 rupees to be maintained per acre. Plus, it uses very valuable resources like water. And what happens is, when you put in so much amount of resources, the pollinators, biodiversity, everything is lawn, because the kind of pesticides, the kind of fertilizers, the kind of chemicals which goes into maintaining of lawns, it kills a lot of native biodiversity. Plus, what happens, the lawn forms an impenetrable layer. So when the rain falls, the water cannot percolate in the ground. But if you have traditional plants, shrubs, ground covers, it will act as a catalyst for underground recharging of water. Because the water cannot penetrate below the lawn, it causes a lot of flash flooding. Plus water, soil, and a lot of time what happens, to move lawns, we either use diesel machines or electricity, whatever we are using. It also leads to a lot of air pollution. So what needs to be done is, the lawn index and project needs to be reduced. Lawns need to be put only in place where they have a functional value. And when you reduce your lawn index, your sustainability index will go high. You'll be using less amount of waters, because if you have proper native ground covers, your watering cycle will get reduced almost by 20-30%. Your maintenance cost will go down. And at the same time, instead of having just a plain green color, you will have a much more colorful feel to the landscapes. If you use native ground covers, they will attract more pollinators like bees and other things. So they have tremendous amount of ecological value. The other thing is a lot of plants which are non-native are sold in a very different way. So a lot of time a religious value is added. Sometimes some feng shui or vastu thing is added. So few days back, I got a forward message like in money vastu, if you put money plant in a particular place, it is very good as per Vastu Shastra. A plant which has came from French Polynesia, which has absolutely no reference in our literature, they are getting marketed in this way. They are being marketed that aap agar money plant lagaoge, you will get a lot of money. There's no relation, nothing. And another point is a plant like money plant is a highly poisonous plant. That's why you will see that the leaves of money plant are never eaten by any butterflies, no caterpillars, and you will find flawless plants. Because these plants have absolutely no ecological role, and these are like setting poison bombs in your house. So accidentally, if your pet or your kid eats a leaf of money plant, or the next thing is the lucky bamboo, which a lot of people put. It's not even a bamboo, it's a plant from the Dracaena family, which is again having toxic nature, introduced from the Central America, African region. So this is how a lot of native plants are introduced with, sometimes with a thing like it will get money or it is good for feng shui, vastu and all those things. And a lot of time the non-native plants are also given name of native gods, like all the sitafals, ramfals, Hanuman fals, they are all fruits which are being imported from Brazil. Or the Lakshmi Taru, these are all non-native plants which are very cleverly given name of goddesses for marketing purposes. So instead of having a money plant, the best thing will be you put a pan or a betel leaf, of which there are more than 45 species found in India of 90 varieties. Bengal itself has around 30 varieties of the pan. It's an equally beautiful plant. It comes very well indoors. The same kind of habitat that a money plant will require, the same type of look that a money plant will have. You will get it in the betel leaf or Magai pan, Calcutta pan. And there are tremendous amount of health benefits. So when you eat pan, it helps in increasing your calcium intake. It helps in proper functioning of your digestive system. The other alternative of a money plant is the black pepper. Again, a beautiful plant which can be used in a wide variety of way, indoors, outdoors, as a replacement of money plant. The other plant which is again extensively used in the landscaping across the country is Gulmohar or Delonix regia, it is the scientific name. A plant which was introduced only in 1840s in the country with the name of flame of forest or something, various names. And today it is one of the most widely used avenue plant. But if you see the analogy of the plant, when the leaf fall, it makes the entire soil acidic because the leaves have allelopathic effect. The other thing is in winters, when we need the sun, when we need the vitamin D coming out, this tree is full of leaf. Our native plants like bombax, erythrinas, they're leafless during winters, so we can get the sun light. During summers, when we need the sun, this plant is leafless. And our natives like erythrina, bombax, and other, they flower during the spring season, which is called as Basant. So the Basant Panchami, Holi can be traced back to our Palash, erythrinas and other things because they were flowering in a period of Basant Ritu. In nature, this is a time when there is scarcity of food. So this flower fell in a very important niche during that point of time, and they act as a source of food for wildlife. Whereas you will never see any birds, bees, butterflies making nest or feeding on this. The other plants that we use a lot is the African tulip tree or Spathodia. Now, this is banned in a lot of country. It is among the 100 most invasive plant in the world, but across the country, it is used on a large scale. The other example are copper pod, champa. So the plumeria, which is from America, has been given the name of champa. So instead of our own Michaelia champaca, people use plumerias, which is again a flowering plant widely used in our country. So these are all the problems that I have spoken about. But if I tell you like, oh, you don't use all these non-native plants for landscaping and all that, but if I fail to give you a solution, the work is half done. So over a period of last 10 years, we have undertaken a lot of research across different biogeographic zones of the country and came out with a palette of non-native plants. So when you have to use trees for landscaping, for your avenue and other things, this is a palette that we have created of the non-native plants, of the native plants which can be used. And our native plants are amazingly beautiful. They're amazing in colors. There is a riot of colors. And on every plant, you will get a lot of birds, bees, butterflies on them. So for if you have to do an avenue plantation, you can use some of these plants that we have suggested. Sita Ashok, Cochlospermum religiosum is one of the example. Red cassias are there, Cassia fistulas are there. And Cassia fistula is among the 10 most beautiful plant in the world. Apart from that, as an alternative to Gulmohar, we have prepared a palette of more than 5-6 plants which have similar kind of orange flowering thing. They are very beautiful. They don't require a lot of watering and other things. And all these trees that you see here, the erythrinas, the bombax, the butias, they on an average, they attract more than 50 species of birds on them. So what you would be creating when you put your plants like that, you'll be creating gardens of life, where when you sit outside your garden, you'll not only see greenery, you will also see birds, you will also hear the call of birds. You will not see a green desert which is lifeless, where you will not see butterflies. But when you create gardens with native plants, you'll be creating gardens of life. Now, these are some of the buinias, which are again very beautiful, which which are among again some of the most beautiful plants in the world. These are some of the 5 amazing beautiful plants which are all native to the country. Now, this was one of the photo that I got about a road full of Butea monosperma in India. So this is how beautiful our native plants look. In the same time, when we are creating landscape gardens, whether we are creating landscape gardens for corporates, whether we are creating for farmhouses, when we are creating it for resorts, we should be now be shifting from green urban deserts just being created for aesthetic value to more functional landscapes where every plantation has some value. So a lot of landscaping can be done for food, where we can grow a range of food with various spices. Like a lot of our spices are very beautiful. They stay evergreen across the year. And when you create gardens of food, it will have a lot of functional value. So instead of using just landscape plants which have no trees which have no use, you can use more of jamuns, jackfruits, and other plants which will also give a harvest. Like mulberry is one tree which is a wonder plant. It grows amazingly fast. It is evergreen. Green. The fruits are wonderful to taste, and it attracts a lot of biodiversity. Apart from that, what can be done is when you are designing your landscape, You can use a lot of tulsis, you can use a lot of other plants which people can use in their day-to-day life. This is again some of the plants that we have tried to collate, which come in very good way. They look also aesthetically good. So for example, a lot of Piper longum or Piper sarmentosum is another plant which is an amazing ground cover which can be used for the landscaping, and at the same time they have a lot of use in our day-to-day food, medicines and other things. Now, few years back, around 5-6 years back, we were said that, okay, you tell us to put native plants. We don't have enough amount of native plants to create a shrubbery, to create hedges, edges. So what we have been doing for everything, we have been creating native pallets and replacement for non-native plants. So we have some very beautiful plants which can be used for creating landscaping, like cardamom can be used in places where low light is there as an amazing hedge. You can use all these flowering plants more and more in your landscaping when you do. They are all native. And this plants, when you put, for example, the plant that you see here, Homescoldia sanguinea, this plant is the best replacement for bougainvilleas, and they will attract a lot of birds and butterflies, and the gardens that you will be creating will have different colors across the year. So what we have done at our end, we have create calendar plantation patterns. So for example, when the flowering of Homescoldia ceases, the flowering of Woodfordia fructosa will start. When Woodfordia fructosa flowering will get over, the flowering of Exoras will start. So there will be always some or the other thing which will be flowering in your garden, and this will keep on bringing birds, bees, butterflies, and they will be permanently there in your garden the way they are there in the forest. Because in forest there is always some or the other things which keeps on fruiting and flowering. So you create a much more colorful gardens full of life. Now these are again a collection of some of the native hedges that we have done over a period of time. And this we have not only documented or identified, we have also suggested, like, okay, if you are using Duranta erecta, which is again a non-native poisonous plant, instead of that you use Inermi. If you're using Bougainvillea, you use Homescoldia. If you are using Hemelia, you use Woodfordia. So these are some of the alternatives that we have came out for every non-native plant. Like Thivacea, when you are putting Thivacea, instead of putting Thivacea, you just put Nerium, which is a native to India. Nerium is having a lot of color. It is good for biodiversity. So same kind of leaf pattern is there, but you will get much more better variety of colors and flowering, and they are much more suited to our country. Now, we created this wonderful hedge using Barleria cristata, and Barleria has again 2-3 colors. And this, when you create a hedge with Barleria, which is a native plant, you will get tremendous amount of biodiversity coming. You will get butterflies, you will get birds coming and roosting in it. Now, again, we use a lot of climbers which are not native to the country to create our landscape gardens. Now, when you replace this non-native plants, again with native plants, they are amazingly beautiful, like Mysore clockvine, scarlet Thunbergia coccinea, or for that matter, even Velaris solanaceae, which is called as bread flower. These are some of the most beautiful climbers in the world. And when you put this, you don't only see amazing beauty in your landscapes, you will immediately start seeing butterflies, bees coming to your gardens. So this is again some of the climbers that we have documented, which are native, which can be planted instead of non-native plants. Now the thing is, when you start replacing non-native plants with native plants, they play a very important biological role, because when a plant fruits, the birds which have evolved over millions of years, they start coming and feeding for it. So for example, if you tell me, hey, Mohammed, you go and eat snakes, I'll say, no, I can't eat snakes and insects. But people in China, people in South America, they do eat it because over a period of time, it has become their food. So what similarly happens when we bring plants from different parts of the world, the birds, bees, and butterflies which depend, they stay in that continent. And for our birds, bees, butterflies, insects, it is not food, so you won't see them feeding. So this is an entire ecosystem. And when you are dealing with plants, you are dealing with something which has life, which has implication on the ecosystems. And every time you put a right plant, you put in a right species of native plants, you will be supporting a lot of pollinators, you will be supporting a lot of native nectarous birds. And the ecological spillover effect of your garden will not only stay in your garden, it will go much more beyond the gardens, because these pollinators, these frugivores, they will start feeding, suppose, and pollinating the crops outside, fruits outside. So the ecological effect goes much more beyond. A native plant that you put in your garden, a bird which comes and feeds on it, it will fly and sit 1 kilometer ahead away. And when it drops the excreta, the seeds which fall down will germinate. So trees which are become rare, which have got locally extinct native species, they will start again repopulating our country's landscapes. The other thing is, it's not only that we need to use native plants. Whenever we are creating landscape gardens, we need to shift towards having a more functional conservation landscaping, where minimum amount of soil is replaced, because when we need to bring soil from outside, when we are bringing a tree which will not grow in that ecosystem, that soil type, when you develop a garden, when you develop a project, if you study very closely the plants, the flora which is there, it will come in that soil type also. It will come in soil type which people think, no, this is a soil which is devoid of nutrients, this is a very a soil with lot of rock content. But there will be trees, plants which are native, which will grow amazingly well. And when you start using plants which are found in the periphery of 4 to 5 kilometers from your project area, it will use much more lesser amount of water, resources, and other things. And slowly we have to move away from a landscaping concept where the gardens are just green across the year. We need to tell people, like the same way nature changes color, we change clothes. Like we cannot go out in a sweater or in a raincoat across the year. In summers, we wear cotton clothes. In monsoon, we wear a raincoat, and in winters, we wear sweaters. So the similar way, the gardens also need to shade their leaves. They need to change color as per seasons. And that will make your gardens a much more colorful place. It will have a different feel across the year. The other thing is, we have taken a very Western view of having manicured gardens, like where you go around cutting things every now and then. So what happens effectively is, we don't let the plants fruit, we don't let the plants flower, we don't let the plants complete their cycle. So when you're putting a native garden, let the flower bloom, let the fruit comes, and after the fruiting season is over, when there is nothing, you can go for cutting and then the plants. So all these concepts need to be brought into functional conservation or conservation landscaping in the country. Now, a lot of time people say, okay, whatever you are talking, is it just a theory-based thing? So what we have done, we have changed landscaped gardens, which had all non-native plants, into functional conservation landscaping. So here I will discuss the case study of the Wipro campus in Pune, which for which we did an ecological restoration project. So when we started our work in 2013, we did a baseline survey to document the flora and fauna. So when we started our work, there were only 24 native species in the campus, and remaining species were all non-native. So the native index of the campus was very low, with only 24 species. Then in the coming 5 years, we did an ecological restoration of the complete project. We replaced non-native plants with native, we replaced non-native hedges with native hedges. And when we completed the project in 2018, after 5 years, the campus now has 242 species of native plants of the Pune region. A lot of species which had got extinct in the Pune landscape were reintroduced through this project. Now the campus is like a important conservatory where a lot of rare and endangered plants have been planted for future conservation. Because another thing that I would like to share, today more land is under corporate campuses, defense campuses, private land holdings like farmhouses, private campuses than our national parks and sanctuaries. And the future of biodiversity, the future of plant conservation is not going to be in protected areas. Because what happens is, in a protected area, in a national park or a sanctuary, a lot of poaching happens. The plants which are there in nature, we don't know what is going to be the future. But when you put native plants in such corporate campuses and defense campuses, you ensure a lifelong conservation of this species. So that is exactly what we did. We replaced all the non-native plants in the Wipro campus with native plants. So what you see here in this particular place, there was a line of Duranta, which we replaced it with native plants like Madhumalti, Procentera, and we created a layer of 3 distinct plants which will flower across the year, which has become a very important habitat for the native flora there. Now, this flower tunnel that you see, it was completely covered with a single species, which was bougainvillea. So what we did, we removed all the bougainvilleas and we replaced that with around 7 creepers, which will flower across the year. And because we mixed around 6 to 7 creepers in this flower tunnel, now the tunnel remains covered, remains green across the year. It flowers, and a lot of butterflies, bees come, carpenter bees, they come for feeding. A lot of birds have actually made nest in this place, and it has become, from a plain monoculture plantation, a thriving ecosystem. So this is how it is now permanently covered. And what you see here, it becomes very important nesting ground for small birds like sunbirds, white-eyes. There was a lawn which was there in the center, which was all covered with just lawn. What we did, we undertook ecological restoration. We put a lot of fruiting and flowering plants. We removed a lot of non-native plants, and we have put cardamom. This is again Barlaria. What we have also done in the Wipro campus, we took an area of around 10,000 square feet, and we created a high density Miyawaki forest there. So the Wipro campus, we from just one monoculture non-native campus, we created different thematic gardens there, like a palm garden, Guinia, aesthetic gardens, then pollinators garden, food gardens, and we also created a forest. And in this single forest, we did a plantation of more than 67 native species. And the growth that you see here, all these plants had grown so much in around 12 to 13 months. So presently, when we were doing the Wipro project, one of the biggest challenge that we had faced, we were not getting native plants. And in the first 2 years, it was increasingly difficult for us to source native plants, because we went around 200 nurseries in and around Pune, and everyone was selling just non-native plants. So the project was not going anywhere. And that was the time when we thought that we had to collect our own native plant. And that's how the birth of our conservation research center happened in Nasik. And today we are working on native species from across the country. We are doing a lot of research on the propagation and conservation of our native plants. Because what has happened is over the last 100 to 100 years, a lot of knowledge has been lost. So time when we get seeds, we don't know how to propagate them because the knowledge has been lost. We are also undertaking a lot of research into the floral and faunal interaction of plants and animals. And another important thing is we are working a lot on creating awareness in regard to conservation landscaping, creating more and more urban forests. So presently at our research center, we are having more than 450 species of native plants from various Indian landscapes. We are undertaking a lot of research into creating habitats for native plants. And in India, there are around 150 species of ficus, which have a tremendous amount of ecological value. They act as keystone species. So out of the 120 species, we have 25 plus species of ficus from the Western Ghat region. So what we have also done is we have created this very simple infographic, which I will share with Sandeep sir and he can share with the group, or if you just go on our social media page, you will see this infographic. So at any point of time you want to check the nativity of any plant, just go to the Flowers of India website, type the plant's name. You will get the image of the plant, open the image, and it will show this thing. It will show native, non-native. So if it is native, it is native. But if it is naturalized, introduced, it is a non-native plant. If you're not able to get enough information from the Flowers of India website, you can visit the below 3 mentioned websites to check the nativity. Even after that, if you feel you have any problem, you can always email us on the below mentioned email ID and we will get back to you. Apart from that, what we have done over the last 10 years, we have created hundreds of posters giving information about native plants, their nativity, their alternatives of non-native plants. And we have put all that on our social media page, mainly on our Facebook. They are all copyright free. Please feel free to go study it, download it, use it. And even after that, if you have any problems, you can always email us. So these are the 2 social media pages. One is the Nature Forever Society website, Facebook page. And the second is the Nature India Native Plant Nursery page. Now, what I want to discuss in depth is whatever work we have done, we can't do that alone. We need to go ahead from now in a collaborative way. A lot of you have the resources, you are part of institutions, you're part of faculty. Get students involved more in undertaking research on our native plants. Work on creating palettes which are region specific. So we don't want a palette which is created for Kerala to be used in Gujarat. A palette of native plants for Gujarat has to be different. A palette, a native plant for Delhi has to be different. So such wise native plant research needs to be undertaken. We need to invest a lot more into conservation landscaping, sustainable landscaping where resource conservation of soil, water, electricity, money, all that also happens. And we need to move away from creating urban green deserts into gardens of life, into gardens which support native flora, which have different colors, which flower across the year, where when you get up in the morning, you should hear the chirps of the bird. You should see butterflies flying around. And this is only possible when we develop a zero tolerance policy towards non-native plants. Again, a lot of people say why we need to have a zero tolerance policy towards native plants, non-native plants. The reason is I have shared only 3 examples with you of lantana, water hyacinth, and parthenium. The kind of danger that we are facing with 20,000 plus non-native plant is too big a risk to be taken. Whatever mistakes have happened. Henceforth, we should stop importing plants from different countries, but start working collaboratively towards saving the 35,000 native plant species of our own country. The other thing is, whatever work we are doing, we need to do collaboratively. We need to work uh, on as many platforms as possible to create awareness, because we have a policy at our end. Whatever has happened, we don't blame anyone but ourselves, because we feel that we were not efficient enough, we were not good enough to go out and create awareness at a larger level. We are trying our best. We are working with governments. We are working with organizations like CEPT. Sandeep sir is a great help, but we want more help. We want more help in creating awareness. So the menace of non-native plants, the ecoterrorism that the non-native plants have unleashed on the country, can be stopped. These are our contact details. This is my personal phone number and email ID. If you have any queries, if you need any help, please feel free to call us up, directly mail me on my email ID. We'll get back to you. This is my phone number. If by some reason I'm not able to reply in time, please feel free to call me up. My phone is on 24 hours. So if there are any questions, we are open for it. Thanks once again for this patient hearing of all that I had to say. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. I think it was very insightful and eye-opening for a lot of us. There are many congratulatory and thank messages in the chat. So usually we ask our viewers to write their questions in chat, then I sort of curate them and take them up. So the first set of questions is going to be about a few plants that people have questions on. So Eldo is questioning whether the white gulmohar that you mentioned, did it originate in Madagascar too? My sense is he's talking about Delonix elata.
No, Delonix elata is a native plant species, and it is one of the best replacement for Delonix regia. So it's a native plant, but it is a plant which is difficult to get, and that is where I always say the power of influencers like you come into play. Because see, our society is a demand and supply based society. So when influencers, when powerful architects like you start asking native plants, the producers will start making native plants.
I've seen it in a lot of farmlands in Gujarat, but never in an urban
Yeah.
area. So I imagine. Yeah. So Mohit has a question, and I think it's a reiteration of your earlier question. But what he's asking is, how does one know? I mean, how long should a plant have been in the country for it to be called native? If you can just repeat
Millions
that.
of years. It's millions of years. 200, 300, 400 years is when our and our grandfathers were there. In ecological terms, it has to be calculated in millions of years. So in very short, before humans came, the plant has to be here.
Absolutely. Anjali has a question about plumeria, and she's saying that she's seen some varieties growing in Western Ghats as well as in Sri Lanka. Are these escaped into the wild, or do you think there may be some native ones?
No, they have escaped into the wild. In fact, a lot of times I had seen a specimen in Lavasa, again in the heart of Western Ghat. The specimen was probably around more than 100 years old. So these plants have came over the past 100, 200 years. And accidentally you will see a stray specimen somewhere in the middle of the forest. So this have escaped or this have been planted and into the wild. Plumeria is not at all a native plant. Michaelia champaka is the best alternative to plumeria, which should be promoted.
Absolutely. So Divya Sharma has another question related to non-native plants, and she says that in Udaipur, probably where she lives, there is a lot of Ponocarpus and eucalyptus plantation, and if you could spread some light on that.
So see, what has happened is in the early 60s and 70s, a lot of plants were planted on the edge of Rajasthan and Gujarat to stop desertification, for creating a green belt kind of thing. So majority of these plants were Ponocarpus, they were Prosopis, they were Acacia, Eucalyptus, Prosopis julifera. So these were all being introduced plants being planted by the forest department. Plants like the seeds of Prosopis julifera were dropped from the planes and helicopters. So they are not native. In fact, if any one of you travel to Bhuj, you will, and when the flight is landing, you will see all green. So when the first time I went to Bhuj, I was sleeping in the plane, and when I got up and I looked down, so I was expecting a semi-arid region, but it was all green, and there was a forest kind of thing. But when I actually went around surveying, it was Prosopis julifera, and in Gujarat it is called as Ganda Bawal. So this is again an introduced plant which has totally devastated the semi-arid ecosystems of Gujarat and Rajasthan area. So they are not native.
Absolutely. There is also another question related to this about Terminalia mantli.
Terminalia?
Mantli.
Non-native. So see what Sandeep sir, the infographic that we have prepared, right?
Yes, yes.
You can easily upload, see on our Facebook page, and I'll also WhatsApp you so you can share it on the groups. Or
Absolutely.
what, because it's a very easy thing to check the nativity. And what we should do is, as landscape architects, it's a very easy thing. See, today Google has helped us a lot. Just go type the name, type nativity, and you will get it. So what I always say is, the kind of research, the kind of time that we give while buying a simple mobile is phenomenal. We will go, we'll check so many reviews, ke ye acha hai, kitna star hai, this, that. So why don't we invest a fraction of that time in checking the nativity? Okay, I can understand with a lot of people who are just casual purchase, who go and purchase plants from nursery or the layman. But as landscape architects, it's your moral and professional responsibility to check nativity of the plants, and it is a very simple thing. And believe me, the more native plants that you plant, the lesser efforts you will have to invest, and the better results you will get in your projects.
So Eldo has a question related to this. Some of the plants that you showed as alternatives, native alternatives, are they specifically sort of native to Maharashtra, or is your research more broad-based?
No, what we have done, sir, is we have prepared pallets for different parts of the country. So for example, for Gujarat, we have to prepare different pallets. For Madhya Pradesh, we have prepared a different pallet. But again, what I want to communicate to this August gathering is, you come from a very esteemed organization. So what you should be putting your students more through is the research component, more through is the botany component. So if students take up projects of creating palettes for different region, for different biogeographic zones, much more dynamic palettes will be developed over a period of time. We have tried our best to create palettes as region specific as possible over the last 10 years, but we have a small team, we have finite small resources, and specifically in a biodiversity rich country like India, there is always so much new to discover. So for example, specifically in biodiversity hotspots like the coastal or the Western Ghat regions of Maharashtra, Karnataka, Goa, Kerala, Northeast, Central India, there is absolutely a black hole when we talk about states like Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh. So we need to work at grassroots level to create local palettes. And maybe after 5-10 years, this information when it is shared or at a much more broader platforms, it will become accessible.
Absolutely. So related to this question that you are now seeing, a lot of the viewers have written that sourcing of native plants is very difficult since, like you already said, most nurseries do not, cultivate them. And there is one interesting question that Sachin is asking is, it obviously needs to be collected from the wild. So do you think that is ethical to collect it from the wild, or do you think there is another way to look at this?
So see, I'll give you an answer to this. This was the same problem that we were facing when we were working on our projects, because we used to recommend around 100, 150 plants, and the organizations with whom we were doing ecological restoration or conservation landscaping project, they were just not able to source the plant. And that is the reason we established a native plant research and conservation nursery in Nasik. So we have plants for the projects that we are working, or if anyone wants plants, we can get the plants from them. Now coming to the second question, the more you as influencers, as architects start asking plants of native origin, the more availability will increase. The second thing is, a lot of time we follow very ethical code of collection as far as our plant material is concerned. We do collect it primarily from places which are not in protected areas or which are in certain gardens and other things. So the natural gene pool is not affected. The other thing is, we are working with a lot of people. We have created our own network of places where mother plants are there. But this thing will only increase when we start undertaking plantation. More mother plants will be created in private campuses, in corporate campuses, and that will form the future source of our plant material. The other thing is, we are having a very rich biodiversity. So we need to also work on the alternative propagation techniques which presently are not present. So it's something like how the market evolves. How the nursery industry evolved over the last 25 years was mainly on the concept of supply and demand. So when people start asking and demanding things, the supply network, the everything will be created. But we need to start somewhere, and this is the start that we are looking out for.
So there are a lot of questions on sourcing of native plants, and I would like to summarize what you're saying and say that yes, there may be a very few sources at the moment, including the one that you are developing. But if more of us ask for native plants, then eventually the number of sources will increase. So the movement has to be to first ask for native plants, right?
And Sandeep sir, see, that is the reason we were working for last 5 years in collecting plant species and in developing a threshold limit. So for example, today if I talk of any plants, we are presently in a situation where for each species we are having at least 2,000, 5,000 number of plants with us. So because what would have happened if we would have talked about this around 3 years back, and someone would have asked and we would not have been able to give, then they would have said कि अरे ये सिर्फ theoretical बात है, practical बात नहीं है. So we prepared a platform, we prepared a foundation from which we are open to sharing knowledge, we are open to sharing species for future conservation of a native plant species.
Absolutely. So there are a couple more questions on something that you showed in your presentation, and they are asking about the Miyawaki plantation that you did. So do you think that concept and the process, is it fine to be applied to the Indian context?
This was a very good question that has been asked, and I would like to thank the person who has asked. So see, again in Miyawaki, what has happened, a lot of people who are practicing Miyawaki method in India, they have blindly copied the Japanese method without applying their brains on it. Now, in Japan, when they did the Miyawaki method, it was basically being done for creating a natural barrier on the coastal areas, because Japan gets a lot of tsunamis. So they wanted to create a belt, like in our country, we have natural mangroves. They don't have that. So they wanted to create a forest which will absorb the shock of the tsunamis. And because Japan's soil was devoid of nutrients, they had a nutrient-rich soil. So what they did, they brought in soil from outside. They put a lot of other things like coco peat and all these things. So a lot of people blindly copied the Japanese method. What we have done, we don't replace the soil. We don't dig up, we don't put around 3-5 feet of soil, because that is again a criminal thing. If you are creating a forest and you are asking soil to be mined from somewhere else for your Miyawaki forest to be developed, it is again a criminal activity. So what we have done, we have just adopted the concept. So Miyawaki concept is basically creating a primary forest with a very high amount of ecological succession in a shorter period of time. So in nature, a primary forest takes around 200 years to develop. And the development is nothing but a very dense plantation with a very high species index. So what we do, we study the local soil condition, like what is the soil, and we don't replace any soil. We just put a media that we have designed and we put plants which are from that region. So for example, in Gujarat, if you want to put a Acacia nilotica, you won't dig a 3 feet soil and put soil. You'll just plant a tree and the tree will come. So our method is not blindly copying the Japanese Miyawaki method. We have evolved and we have taken it a bar ahead. The last Miyawaki forest that we did, we have put a species index of around 86 species, which are native to that region. And what happens is when you develop the Miyawaki forest without replacing soil, without having a very high resource utilization, but a very high species index, so the ecological spillover effect spreads over a much more larger area, because what ultimately happens, the birds, bees, butterflies, they start using the forest for their roosting and feeding and nesting place. A bird will eat the fruit and it will drop it around 2 kilometers far. So this 86 species that you are putting in a 10,000 or 1 acre area will have a spillover effect of 3-4 kilometers. So definitely Miyawaki is a wonderful method to undertake ecological restoration, but not by blindly copying the Japanese method.
Absolutely. I think that is very interesting. So there are, as I see, 3 more topics that we can discuss on. So one is what says that these days there is a lot of preference on, tropical, which means big-leaved gardens that sometimes, let's say, come from a very equatorial climate like Sri Lanka or Singapore or something like that. Bali, in fact, is very popular. So these are not species that they are very sensitive to the way the climate is, and they are not easily, they don't invade the other parts. So is it okay to go ahead with such kind of gardens which are non-invasive? And is there anything else that can replace in the big leaf variety, such an sort of?
So what happens is what I spoke before, our understanding about ecosystems, about the way plant behaves is very shallow. So we are telling it is not going to be invasive today, but can anyone guarantee what will happen after 50 years, 200 years? No one can guarantee. So probably people who must have brought in lantana, who must have brought in other species, must also had a similar thought process. So it is a risk which we should not be taking at all. At the same time, what I have realized over a period of last 10 years, when you talk with people for whom you are creating the projects, they all want a good nature because they love nature. When you educate them, like when you put a native plant species, this is the benefit, 95% of the time the clients agree. It is at times only the concept which someone wants to bring who's amendment on it. But the people for whom the projects are getting implemented, they are mostly happy with native plant species. The other thing is, we are also having a lot of species which are broadleaves in India. The Western Ghat is having a lot of species which can be done. So that is where your requirement should come in. Like, okay, we want a plant which is this shape, and we have a plant. See, sir, we are having 35,000 species of plants in India. there will be an alternative somewhere. We have to work towards finding it out.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. So another question talks about the larger context in which we are discussing this, and one part of the question that somebody has asked is there are a lot of protected forests and national parks which at some time were planted by the British with a lot of teak or Shorea robusta in areas that are not sort of native for those plants and trees, and now that they are protected, nothing can be removed from that area. On the other hand, there are protected forests that have a lot of, let's say, like you said, lantana infestation or any other plant infestation, which is absolutely very difficult to replace. So the first part of the question is where the government is already protecting a forest which is essentially non-native. What is your perspective? And the second is where it is understood that the plant is invasive, but it is very difficult to remove. Have you had any experience in looking at removal or reduction of that plant?
So see, the government we are actively working on the advocacy front with both the central and the state governments. So for example, the government of Karnataka has a notification where non-native plants like acacia, gulmohar, or invasive plants like eucalyptus and other things can be removed without permissions. So the government is also actively looking into ecological restoration project. On a case-to-case basis, the government is also undertaking removal of non-native plants, but it is still in a policy where certain states have it, certain states don't have it. The most recent notification that we worked with the Bombay Municipal Corporation, which was brought out that henceforth, whatever plantation will be done in the MMRDA region will be only native plants. So slowly, we are working on that thing where the government takes a holistic thing that if it is non-native, it has to be replaced, because a lot of time we come from a culture, we come from a thought process that every tree is a good tree. हम पेड़ कैसा काटे, why we have to remove a tree, उसके ऊपर पेड़ पत्ता है, ये है वो है. But we need to understand, because see, I am a scientist. I don't bring in my emotions into the work that I do. So that kind of removal of non-native plants and replacing that with native plants, we are actively working, and the government in certain places of the country is also doing that. The second question is about removal of lantana. So a species like lantana is very difficult to remove. So in Corbett, there is a method which is called as slash, like you cut the tree and you put it upside down and then it is burned. So ecological restoration of species like lantana, it is being removed from the existing landscape. Like in Corbett, there are some wonderful case studies where lantana has been removed and native grass species have been put in that place to create chores or natural grassland which are found in those ecosystems. And slowly the forest comes back. But it is something which has to be done scientifically, and it is possible.
Absolutely. There is a similar question regarding Prosopolyflora gandobauer that you mentioned.
Yeah. So
sure
see, it is again the removal of Prosopis is very difficult process, because when you cut it, it comes back 20 times more. And in one of the reference, they have given that the root goes almost till around 50 meters deep into the soil. So even that root bank is enough to regenerate. So this is what we are so afraid of. Like the non-native plants are extremely difficult to remove once they get themselves established by destroying the native ecosystems. And that's the reason we should have a zero tolerance policy as far as non-native plants concerned.
Absolutely. And there is one more different kind of question that a lot of our viewers have asked is, can you refer any books that are a good source of information on native plants for each region or overall in that sense?
So see, there are a lot of floras which the Botanical Survey of India has taken out, which documents the natural flora which is found in that region, about which are the species. But if someone is asking like, okay, just for landscape plants or something like that, we are working on taking out a book on the common native plants which can be used for landscaping or conservation landscaping in India. But as of today, there is nothing. you have to go back to the flora, see the plants, and then check its nativity.
So the Botanical Survey of India would have sort of a master
Yeah,
list for
Botanical
each
Survey
region?
of India removes local flora. So there is a flora for Kutch. There is a flora for each district that the BSI regularly removes, comes up with.
Absolutely. I think that should be very interesting. So there is another question which is very interesting in my
Hello.
mind, and it says that Mother Earth-based landscaping is now very less in urban areas, and a lot of landscaping happens on podiums, terraces, or areas which have slabs. So, what is your perspective
Hello.
on? Yeah,
Hello.
can you hear me? Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me back?
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Yeah.
Sir, I missed. Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Hello.
Yes, sorry,
Hello.
we are just having a glitch. Just give us a moment. I can hear you, sir. Can you hear me back?
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sir, can you hear me?
us? Yeah.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello.
Tapan, can you hear me?
Sandeep sir, somehow I'm not hearing. I don't know if something is happening.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Hello.
Okay.
Sir, we can hear
I
you.
think Mohammed has lost his audio. Just give us a moment, everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear us?
Hello.
We can hear
Sir,
you clearly.
I can't hear. Hello.
Yeah. Could you
Hello.
leave and join again? Is that possible? Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Sorry, everyone. We're just having a glitch.
No, I'm not able to hear. Can you? Are you able to hear me? I'm not able to hear. How do we do this? Can we type our questions to you? Hello. So can you just let me in?
Yeah. Allowed. Hello? Hello?
Yeah. We can't hear.
Yeah, now I'm able to hear.
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm so sorry. I don't know. It got
No worries.
disconnected.
No worries.
Yeah,
No
please.
worries. So
So
yeah,
sorry for this.
the last part of the question was that there is
Yeah.
somebody's asking that in urban areas there is very less landscaping now happening on Mother Earth. A lot of landscaping is on terraces, podiums, and higher levels. Do you have any?
We are talking about hello.
Yeah.
So
Landscaping
see-
on podiums and terraces.
Yeah, so in that regard also, when if you are considering hedges, edges, ground covers and all that, there are a lot of native options for that. When we are talking about tree, we are now also working with trees which have shallow root system and which don't cause structural damage to the podiums. So this is again something that we are very actively working on, and that's where the collaboration between the landscaped architects, institution like yours, and a research organization and a agency like us comes in, because we'll have to do a little bit of trial and error. We know that, okay, this root system is not going to harm. So probably an institution like yours can create a demo kind of structure where we can do plantation and we can get results. But certainly, as far as other things are concerned, they are having tremendous options, lot of options for shrubbery, ground covers, hedges, and other things. For trees, also there are like Michaelia champaka, there are certain small trees like Acacia glauca and all that, which will have absolutely no problem with the structures. So that is also an opportunity which can very well be taken care of.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think this is what we have time for today. And I would like to thank Mr. Dilawar for taking out the time and enlightening us and giving us such an insightful presentation. And I would also like to thank all our viewers who have managed to join us in this very difficult time all around the country as well. We hope the learning of these can be taken further as we move ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sandeep sir. And I would ask everyone to stay safe, take care of your and your family. And see, this is a time when during the Corona crisis, where our native plants have came to our rescue. Whether it is all the immune boosting plants, they were all native medicinal plants. So had we created more landscape gardens with our plants, we would have got medicine right outside our homes and gardens.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Take care, be safe, everyone. And thanks a lot for
Be safe,
providing us
everyone.
this opportunity. Bye.
Absolutely. Be safe, everyone, and hopefully we'll see you again very soon. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye.